Hi, my name is Alex Viggio, and I am a board member of Agile Denver. What really has made Mile High Agile such a success for Agile Denver is that it gives us one day a year where we can try to come together as a large group of these various different types of people with different interests. We're pushing 850 or so people, and so there's a lot more diversity, and still if you look out there, there's people mixing, people talking, sharing ideas from different perspectives, and so that I think is what, over the last 5 years with this conference, will serve to strengthen us.
Well, I volunteer for Agile Denver because I believe in community, and I believe in being engaged in not just working where I work, but in spreading Agile in the community and across the country.
This is fantastic. This is my first year here. I was honored and selected to be a speaker talking about transformation, and when I learned there were 850 people here today, that was just fantastic. I'm just excited to see the enthusiasm and support for this whole Agile effort.
The volunteers here have been a lot of fun. And great exposure, some nice networking. I've been talking to people in different companies, and it's a really informal way of saying, how do you like your company? What are your pros and cons? What is your culture? So I'm learning a lot from other people, and if you're looking for another opportunity or just checking out other companies, it's a great place to meet some really fine, smart people.
We can find ways to do more one-day events like this. I think that'll be a good thing. I just want to quickly introduce Rod Collins. I do want to start by thanking Frank Vega and others who introduced us to Rod and suggested Rod as a keynote, having seen him speak at some lean Kanban events. So thanks, Frank. But thank you, Rod, for flying out from Houston to join us today. This is our first time doing a lunch keynote as well. We're very happy to have Rod here to represent his perspective. And just real quick, Rod is the Director of Innovation at Optimity Advisors, a national management consulting firm. He's a leading expert on a next-generation perspective on business management. He was formerly the Chief Operating Executive of Blue Cross Blue Shield Federal Employee Program, which is one of the nation's largest and most successful business alliances, which today has over $30 billion in annual revenues. And under his leadership, that business experienced its greatest 5-year growth in its 54-year history. So again, we're very happy to have Rod join us today and kind of give us his perspective coming from outside the Agile community. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you. Let us begin our time together by engaging in a thought experiment. Imagine that instead of being in this hotel room, we are in a time machine. And our destination today is to travel back to central Pennsylvania in the early 1700s. Our trip proceeds smoothly enough, but as we almost reach our destination, we encounter the most severe turbulence any of us has ever experienced. After some truly terrifying, gut-wrenching moments, somehow we managed to land safely on the gentle slopes of the 18th century Commonwealth. As we all breathe a sigh of relief, thanking our lucky stars we're still alive, the captain comes on and informs us she has good news and bad news. The good news is, despite the obvious malfunction in our vehicle, we have arrived safely. The bad news, we are 300 years in the past, and we don't have the technology to repair the vehicle. And so the captain informs us, we are all now permanent residents of this 18th century agricultural paradise. So picture this, as you sit here stunned, thinking, this isn't the trip I signed up for. And as you begin to think how you will acclimate to spending the rest of your life in the 18th century, I have a very important question for each and every one of you. How many of you will easily find a job in your current line of work? You see, in the agrarian age, There were no software developers, computer programmers, executives, managers, telemarketers, customer service representatives. There weren't even professional athletes. All of these jobs are products of the industrial age and simply didn't exist in the agrarian age. Well, believe it or not, this is exactly where we find ourselves today, because you see, in this moment, you realize you're not just in a different time and place. You're in a completely different world with a completely different set of rules. And so it is with us today, with the very sudden and very rapid emergence of the new digital age. If you've had the opportunity a few years back to go through Denver's airport here, some of you may recall there was a very thoughtful ad campaign from the University of Denver's business schools. And one of those ads read something like this: the top 10 jobs of 10 years from now don't exist today. It turns out we do not have to engage in a thought experiment. We do not have to step into a time machine to suddenly find ourselves in a completely different world with a completely different set of rules. All we have to do is be residents of the early 21st century. We sit here today on the threshold of a completely new and different business reality, for which I would suggest to you, most business organizations today and their business leaders are almost completely unprepared. The signs are all around us. As a matter of fact, they are hidden in plain sight. But the business leaders can't see it because they have been trained to see the world, especially the world of business, through the social lens of a 19th century management model that is rapidly losing relevance in a 21st century world. And although they don't see it, they do feel it. And they feel it in this way. Business leaders today are experiencing both an unprecedented and highly difficult challenge. And that challenge is this: the world is changing much faster than their organizations. Every business in every industry, no exception, has been overtaken by an incredible accelerating pace of change that shows no signs of letting up anytime soon. As a matter of fact, I think everyone will unanimously agree it's only going to get faster. We now live in a permanently fast-forward world, which is why I call this new world, with its new rules, that we suddenly find ourselves in, the Wiki world. Wiki is the Hawaiian word for quick or fast. And if a business is going to survive today, it has to be designed to move fast. That is a problem for the 19th century management architecture because it is designed to move slow. Now, why are we suddenly thrust into this new world with its new rules? What has come together, especially in the last decade or two, is the unprecedented combination of three factors that have suddenly thrust us into this new world. The first of them is the one we've just been talking about, accelerating change. The second one is escalating complexity. The world today, the degree of difficulty is far, far greater today than it was even a decade, 2 decades, or 3 decades ago. What most business leaders don't understand is while the world has gotten harder, the fundamental business issues have been radically transformed and very different from what they're used to. Because you see, all throughout the industrial age, business issues could be best described essentially as issues of complication. Now, issues of complication come about because in the industrial age, all of a sudden, we were involved in creating machines, to make machines, to sell in the marketplace. I mean, that's the industrial age summed up. And so, all of a sudden, we had large numbers of people working on complex machines, complicated machines, and when something went wrong, the trick was to find the 3 or 4 or 5 things that were driving the problem. And then once you found them, what would you do? Well, you take problem number 1, we're going to give it to your department. Problem number 2, you take care of that. Problem number 3, that's your responsibility, and so forth. And by the way, stay out of each other's business. The great mantra of industrial age management is do your job and stick to your job. Because one of the fundamental foundations of traditional hierarchical management is what is known as the division of labor. It was considered to be efficient. And so by dividing things up, what happens is you all work on your part of it. You bring it to me, the almighty supreme leader at the top, the CEO, whatever, and I will put it together and all will be well. And you know what? That worked for about 100 years. But it doesn't work anymore today because you see, because we have escalating complexity, our issues now are issues of complexity. And the difference between complex issues and complicated issues is this. When you find now the 3 or 4 things that are going wrong, not among the thousands of parts, but the millions of parts today, you can't divide the labor. All problems have to be solved in the presence of the other problems. Complex issues have got to be solved holistically. And so, if your business is going to survive and thrive in this new world and its new rules, it needs to be designed to work and think holistically. That's a problem for the 19th century management model because it is by design fragmented. The third factor in this unprecedented combination is the one that makes the combination truly unprecedented. Because you could argue we've had accelerating change before. We've had escalating complexity before, not in any of our lifetimes. It happened at the start of the Industrial Revolution relative to the agrarian age which we had left at that time. But this third factor has never existed before in human history, and it is this: ubiquitous connectivity. For the first time in human history, we all live in a hyper-connected world where anybody in this room can connect with anybody else on the planet that's connected to the internet without going through a central organization. Ubiquitous connectivity has given us the new phenomenon of mass collaboration and is radically transforming the contours and the landscape of business. Ubiquitous connectivity now has given us a technology that makes networks smarter and faster than hierarchies. If you want to survive and thrive in today's business world, then your organization needs to be designed and focused on collaboration. That's a problem for the 19th century management model because its primary focus is compliance. Do what you're told. And so all of a sudden, managers are feeling the frustrations of working in a new world with its new rule because at a time where organizations need to be fast, holistic, and focused on collaboration, they're working in enterprises that are slow, fragmented, and focused on compliance. No wonder so many managers today feel completely overwhelmed by what seems to them to be an unmanageable state of affairs. But at the same time, there is a small but growing group of vanguard companies who are thriving in this time of great change. They are growing faster than we've ever seen companies grown before in the history of business. They are extremely profitable. People love working for them, and they're adding to their ranks despite the fact that we've gone through the Great Recession. We at Optimity Advisors were fascinated. Why is it that so many companies are having great difficulty, but yet there's this group of company that just seems to be moving along quite smoothly? And so we did some research. And when we got behind the research, what we recognized is the leaders of what we call the vanguard companies manage very, very differently from traditional managers. They didn't build top-down hierarchies. They built peer-to-peer collaborative networks. And they designed an entirely different management structure around that. And as we began and looked at that, we called it Wiki management or management for the Wiki world, because it's very different from what those of us who went through MBA programs were taught. Now, these vanguard companies include companies such as Google and Gore, Morningstar, Linux, Wikipedia, Threadless, Lego, and in addition to those companies, it also includes a professional community, the Agile community. You all are practitioners of this new form of emerging management. What we want to focus in on today is you are part of a larger movement that is happening alongside of you. And what we want to do today is outline the connections between the world in which you work and the world of this new emerging discipline of management. And so when we looked at the vanguard companies, we found out that they had 5 disciplines in common. 5 disciplines that are rarely, if ever, practiced in traditional organizations. The first of these is understand what's most important to customers. Now, you may be sitting there saying, no, wait a minute, I thought I was going to really hear something revolutionary. You ask any CEO about customers, and they're going to tell you our customers are our most important people. And you know what? You'd be right. That's exactly what they would tell you. But they don't have the processes to back it up. It's nothing more than platitude. It's nothing more than lip service. Now, a company that truly understands the importance of understanding what's most important to customers is Lego. And they demonstrated that by their very unusual reaction to a pretty serious security breach. You see, a few years back, they had produced this new online game called Mindstorms. And they were really excited about Mindstorms. They put a lot of work and effort into this. They put it out there into the marketplace, and they were seeing how everybody would react. And it was out there only about 4 weeks before some hacker came in and completely revamped all the programming in the Mindstorms game. Big security breach. So as the people at Lego got together to decide, what are we going to do about this? They began the discussion by noticing 2 things. Number 1, the hacker was not an enemy. The hacker was a Lego loyalist, somebody they knew. But it was the second thing that really caught their attention. His hacking, it made the game a hell of a lot better. So what they decided is, rather than close the security breach, they decided to open it up. And they invited 100,000 Lego loyalists to join their on-staff group of 120 programmers to help them co-create their games. What better way to understand what's most important to your customers than to make them co-creators of what you build? If they co-create it, do you think they're going to the competition? Also, if they co-create it, do you think you will ever lose touch with how their needs are changing and shifting? Online gaming is a rapidly evolving industry. And so by being able to stay in touch with their customers, they're able to keep pace with a changing world. Lego demonstrates what it means to understand what's most important to customers. The vanguard companies, in this focus on customers, are transforming business in 2 major ways. Number 1, they are radically reshifting the fundamental purpose of a business. If you are of my generation, when you went to business school, you learned on the first day of Business 101, the purpose of a business is to create shareholder wealth. And that was an unquestioned and unchallenged assumption. It is why business today is focused and riveted on their financial statements, because that's where all the shareholder wealth is reflected. The leaders of the vanguard companies say absolutely not. The purpose of a business is not to create shareholder wealth. Now, that's not saying they don't think shareholder wealth is important. They do, but they don't think it's the purpose. For them, the purpose of a business is to create value for customers, because they understand the wisdom of a business reality that if you don't have any customers, you don't have to worry about having shareholders. You want shareholder wealth? You create customer value. And on average, the Vanguard companies create more shareholder wealth than those companies who think it's the primary purpose. The second great transformation that they have driven is our fundamental understanding of an organization. Go to any traditional company, ask any traditional leader, who are the members of your organization? And they will whip out the organization chart, the people on our payroll. Because for most people in traditional companies, work is something that is done within the four walls of their business. Most executives are more focused on their position in the company than they are the company's position in the market. And that is dangerous in a fast-changing world. It's also an inhibitor to innovation. If you go ask the Vanguard leaders, who are the members of your organization, they are going to tell you any human being with whom we interact. That's our employees, it's our suppliers, it is our customers, it's our regulators, any human being with whom we interact. When you think that way, you do invite 100,000 customers to help co-create your products. And you never lose sight of your customers. They are a part of your organization. Mass collaboration has given us this capacity for crowdsourcing. On January 2nd, 2001, Larry Sanger met his good friend Ben Korbitz for dinner in a small Mexican restaurant in San Diego. It is arguably the dinner that changed the world. Over the course of that dinner, Larry had shared with Ben. Ben was moving to California to accept a new job. Larry had moved there about a year earlier to become the editor-in-chief for this new online venture by the name of Nupedia. And Larry's telling Ben they've had a lousy first year at Nupedia, despite the fact that they had assembled an incredible group of academic experts, put in place a sterling example of the 7-step hierarchical review process that encyclopedias had literally used for over 2 centuries. At the end of 1 year, they had produced a grand total of about 25 articles. At this glacial pace, Larry said to Ben, this online venture may be ready for prime time at the start of the next century. Larry probably wondered if he had made a bad career move joining this new online venture. Well, as Ben empathized with his friend, he asked him, have you ever heard of the Wiki website? Now, of course, you all know what that is, but Larry didn't. So Ben explained to Larry, he said, well, the Wiki website is this place software developers have where they pool their knowledge and they create staple programs, and they're quite prolific and they really are producing some high quality stuff. This might be the solution for your production problems with your new online company. So Larry thinks about it and says, you know, that makes a lot of sense. So the next day he goes running into his boss's office. His boss is Jimmy Wales, tells him all about the dinner. Jimmy says, you know, I've heard about this Wiki website. Let's go do it. So on January 10th, 2001, the Wiki software is combined with Nupedia, and the academics go ballistic. They say there is no role for the masses in so scholarly an effort as producing an encyclopedia. And besides this, they are insulted and outraged. How dare you expect us to rabble-rouse with the crowd? We are highly trained professionals. We are experts. We are PhDs. And you will not insult us in this way. They're so vehement in their objection that Jimmy throws up his hands and says, okay, you win. 5 days later, January 15, 2001, the Wiki software is removed from Nupedia. And the academics are proud. They have prevailed. They have defended the honor of professionalism. Jimmy is not so sure. He still thinks this Wiki thing is a good idea. So he says, you know, I'm going to let the academics have Nupedia and they can do it their way. So Jimmy decides, I'll just start a second venture. which Larry quickly dubbed Wikipedia. And you all know the rest of this story. None of us have ever heard of Newpedia, and the whole world is using Wikipedia. Jimmy Wales and Larry Sanger made an incredible leap to extraordinary performance because they stumbled into the second discipline of wiki management. Aggregate and leverage collective intelligence. This is a game changer. It is why traditional organizations are going to stumble. It's why the transition is more likely to be displace and replace rather than evolve. Because you see, this second discipline completely tears apart. Mike Cohn talked this morning about unquestioned assumptions. Here is the unquestioned assumption of top-down hierarchical management that has held for over 100 years that no longer makes sense today. And that assumption is this: the smartest organizations are the ones that leverage the intelligence of their smartest individuals. That's why we build command and control structures. Because the theory is the smart people rise up to the top of the rank. And if we allow the smartest people at the top to direct and control the work of everyone else, we make the organizations smarter than they otherwise would be if we left the individuals to their own. The vanguard companies don't see it the same way. They believe that the smartest organizations are those that leverage their collective intelligence. Because nobody is smarter or faster than everybody. What we lacked until hyperconnectivity was the technology to aggregate collective intelligence on a cheap and efficient way, but it exists today. In 1998, the last thing the world needed was another search engine. We had a crowded field of upstarts with such names as Lycos and Alta Vista, and it all looked like Yahoo was going to be the dominant name in search. And along comes these two graduate students from Stanford who got this innovative idea. You see, all the other search engines were using editorial experts to rank the pages. What is the great insight of Page and Brin? Let's aggregate and leverage collective intelligence. When they put Google into the marketplace, what was so stunning was how quickly they grabbed 2/3 of the search market, and they've sustained it all of this time. All of us, by our choices with respect to search, are indicating that we believe, by our choices, that nobody is smarter or faster than everybody. This is a hard one to get our heads around, because every single one of us has gone through an intensive educational system that has told us that intelligence is essentially an individual attribute. As a matter of fact, what the vanguard companies call collaboration is known in education as cheating. We are not preparing our students for the 21st century world, because the world belongs to the collaborators. Cheating is not a bad thing, because the best way we learn is from each other. The other thing is, no one of us can process everything happening in real time. You could do that 30 years ago. 30 years ago, Lee Iacocca could and did save Chrysler. He could not do it today. The world is moving so fast, no single person can process everything. We have got to learn how to aggregate and tap into collective intelligence. And so for the doubters in the room who say, yeah, listen, it really comes down to individuals, I'll tell you one last story. This happened in the summer of 2012. There was a biomolecular problem in AIDS research that was stumping all of the world's scientists. They had worked on the problem literally for over 10 years. Breaking this biomolecular problem was important, because if they could do it, they would take AIDS research to an entirely different level of achievement. This was an important thing to do, which is why all the world scientists were focused on it. but despite their best efforts, no result. There was a professor out at the University of Washington. He established an online community called Foldit. The interesting thing about Foldit, there were no credential requirements to join. If you couldn't afford to go to college and you were a car mechanic, but you happened to have an affinity for biomolecular issues, you were welcome in the community. Anybody could belong. So the professor says, you know, this biomolecular thing, you know how those structures are, you've seen them with the sticks and the boxes and they move this way and that way. That's great for an online game. So he puts it out there with the problem. And in 10 days, the Foldit community solved the biomolecular problem. Nobody is smarter or faster than everybody. At the end of the 20th century, Time magazine designated its Person of the Year. It was Albert Einstein, arguably the smartest person who ever lived in the 20th century. I am willing to bet you in this second decade of the 21st century that at the end of this century, when Time magazine, if it still exists, names its Person of the Year, it will be collective intelligence. It is the game-changing phenomenon of our times, and most business leaders haven't a clue how it works. The third discipline of Wiki management is build shared understanding by bringing everyone together in open conversations. I learned this one firsthand when I served as the chief operating executive of the Blue Cross Blue Shield Federal Employee Program. It's a rather unique business. Most people don't realize that Blue Cross Blue Shield is not a vertically integrated business. It is a confederation at the time of 39 independent companies. And our job in the Blue Cross Blue Shield Federal Employee Program, or FEP as we called it, was to deliver a seamless product to federal employees and their family members. We were covering 4.5 million people. FEP is literally the largest privately underwritten health insurance account on the planet. There's none bigger. If it were a plan by itself, a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, I think it would have been the 5th or 6th largest. Now, we were having a very difficult time because in the mid to late 1990s, we had endured 2 decades of low growth, low performance. In the 1970s, we had lost 24 points of market share in a year's time. We had gone from 63 down to 39. And most of that was good risks. We almost went out of business in 1981 when we were down to 1 single day's reserves. A health insurer would like to have about 2 to 3 months of reserves. We were on fumes. The dial was on E. Somehow we managed to survive, but over 2 decades we had only recaptured a mere 4 percentage points of that lost market share. We were treading water, and we decided it was time to make a change. We needed to become a high-performing, high-growth company once again. Or enterprise is probably a better way to state it. So as we looked around and said, what are we going to do? We recognized the problem was us and the way we were leading. Because we followed the only management model that we knew. Top-down, hierarchical, command and control management. We barked out directives to these 39 plans, and they didn't follow them. They said, you're not the boss of us. And we realized, well, we're leading an alliance. And for 2 decades we argued, but we're in charge. And they'd say, no, you're not. So we said, if we're going to change this and turn this around, well, we have to learn how to lead by consensus. We have to learn how to lead a network. We have to learn how to lead a business alliance. And you do it very, very differently. And the first thing that we recognized, well, if we can't give directions, how will people all move in concert? And we realized we've got to become experts at building shared understanding. And it must be co-created on a consensus basis. And it must be done rapidly. It was a tall order for us. The way we accomplished that, we invented a meeting process that we called the collaboration work-through. These were 2-day events, but we designed them very, very differently because The most inefficient activity that happens in businesses today are meetings. The way we meet is the debate. That is the form. Walk into any traditional business, there's the conference room. We sit around it. What happens at that conference room? We have agenda. And what do we do with the agenda? We stake out positions. And the idea is whichever position dominates at the end must be the right one. And it creates winners and losers. But the losers don't go home and say, oh, okay, that's that. The losers leave the room and what they say is, I'm going to make like I'm working with them, but I'm going to undercut it. No wonder, 2 decades, low growth, low performance. We don't have everybody working together. So we got to stop that. So we have to stop the debate. And we have to come to consensus within 48 hours. So that was our parameters. And what we did is we designed this meeting format, and we got a microcosm of the business in the room. That's the other problem with meetings. We meet by levels, or we meet by departments. But you never get the whole system in the room at one time. If a vice president ever stumbles into a meeting with staff people, they will be out of there in a heartbeat because they fear they'll reduce their status. So in one meeting, we had senior level executives and we had staff level people. We had every discipline represented, microcosm of the room. Because the idea, if anything comes up here, we don't have to wait for a meeting out there. We can handle everything in the room. The other thing we did is we set up this rule, no debates. And the way we mechanically put that in place is all presentations would be given without interruption. So we'd open with a presentation. And if we had small group work, they would present out. And then after the presentations, you are only allowed to ask clarifying questions. No agreements, no disagreements, no I got a better way. Because that's what destroys the effectiveness of conversation in business organizations. If you only allow clarifying questions, everybody has to listen to each other. We had other mechanics. The way we would come to closure is when groups would report out, they would have all their flip charts, and we would put them on a wall. And we would ask people, find 2 items that look the same, call them out, and we'll reduce this down to a mutually exclusive list. And what happens is, when the context of the dialogue is, how is this different from that idea, rather than how is this better than that idea, you wind up listening to all of the ideas. When I am stuck in how is this better than idea, how is my idea better than yours, I never listen to your idea because I already assume I'm right and you're wrong. If the dialogue is how is this different from that, the only way I can explain the difference is I have to visit both ideas. And the other thing we did is we had discussions about ideas that were closer together rather than at the extremes. And then at the end of these things, the way we came to closure was not through debate, it was through dots. Everybody gets 4 dots. The idea of 1 person, 1 vote's not too good. I like 4 votes per person. It gives you a better reading of the room. It gives you a better way to aggregate collective intelligence. And oftentimes what happens is as a result of the dots, and in some of these, when I've done them with clients, they say, what we have to do is follow the dots, and there's some wisdom to that. Because if you use this exercise, what happens is there'll be a framework of about 4 or 5 items that the dots will coalesce around. And you have a solution that I like to call the elegant set. Because what you'll wind up is you have item A that was important to this political faction, item B that was important to the other political faction that could never get agreement between the 2 of them, and the other 2 or 3 items are the bridges that make the first 2 items work when you put them together as a set. And all of a sudden, in 48 hours, we had 50 or 60 people unanimously agreeing, I can get behind that. That process allowed us to put in new systems, new products. And when we put in systems conversions in a business alliance of 39 different organizations, it was 39 simultaneous conversions. We could put them in on time, on budget, and not a single customer-facing issue. That's the power of shared understanding. The thing about this type of shared understanding that astounded us, and we didn't expect this, is when we first started to do this, we thought, wow, we really have made leaps and bounds, but if you weren't in the room, what's going to happen? We found out it broadcasted out quite easily because the reaction of people who weren't in the room was, wow, that's really well thought out. And looking backwards, we realized why, and that's the power of shared understanding. If your fundamental rule is, I'm going to get all the voices in the room, I'm going to kill a debate, and we're not going to agree until we have unanimous consensus, every voice is represented in the framework. And so when people outside the room hear the solution, they see my voice is represented. I'm on board. And so this ability to build shared understanding, it leveraged itself literally across 39 distributed organizations. It was a big surprise to us, one that we didn't anticipate and only recognized looking backwards. The fourth discipline of Wiki management is focus on the critical few performance drivers. Traditional managers are focused on the wrong numbers. They're focused on the financial statement, profit and loss, earnings per share. Now, I'm not saying that these numbers aren't important. I believe they are. And I'm not saying don't tie compensation to them. I believe you should. Results matter. What I am saying is financial statement numbers are lousy, terrible management tools. Because like a score in a sporting event, it's something you only get when the game is over. They're numbers about the past. Management's job is always about the future. The key performance drivers are leading indicators. And every business needs to know what are the 3 or 4 most important leading indicators. In the Vanguard companies, we were impressed. In so many of them, the most important number was not the numbers that mattered to Wall Street. So many of them, their most important number was a number known as the Net Promoter Score. How many of you are familiar with the Net Promoter Score? Show of hands. About half the room. Actually, all of you are familiar with the Net Promoter Score because you have answered this question, I'm sure. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our product or service to a friend, family member, or colleague? And what you do is when you get the answers to that question, you take the 9s and the 10s, compute them as a percentage. You take the 6 and belows, compute that percentage. You throw out the 7s and the 8s, and you subtract the 6 and belows from the percentage of 9s and 10s. Theoretically, your score can be plus 100 or minus 100. If everybody rates you 9 or 10, you're plus 100. Everybody rates you 6 or below, you're minus 100. Zappos is one of the Vanguard companies. Their Net Promoter Score is in the low 80s. That's phenomenal. They really do understand what's most important to customers. That means their results look something like this. 85% of people rate them 9 or 10. And about 3% of people rate them 6 or below. 85 minus 3, 82. How did enterprise become the number 1? Avis doesn't tell us they're number 2 anymore, do they? Enterprise, the most important number, the Net Promoter Score. Because that lets you know if you are tracking with the customer. Think about it. Tony Hsieh is the CEO of Zappos. If that Net Promoter Score drops from 82 all of a sudden down to 65, he knows about it long before it's ever hit their financial statements. He knows about it in time to find out what they need to do. And the leading indicators are important because today's managers, one of the most critical choices they have to make was one that never had to be made before, when business models lasted 30 to 40 years. You see, if your leading indicator starts dropping, you have to decide, do I correct or do I change? And if you're correcting when you should be changing, which is what the music industry did, what was their corrective action? Put Napster out of business, sue 20,000 of our customers. They won all the legal battles, but how did that work out for them, huh? They should have bought Napster, swallowed their pride, and we'd all be buying our digital downloads from Napster and not iTunes. They were correcting when they should have been changing. We manage the future. Leading indicators are important because you never want the financial results to go south. And the only way you can guarantee it is track the leading indicators, know when to correct, know when to change. The Vanguard companies do that well. In 1958, a middle-aged engineer left a 17-year career with one of the nation's best-known companies, DuPont, to literally start a business in his basement. He wanted his business to be very, very different from the one he had just left. You see, he noticed when he was at DuPont, the best conversations, the most innovative discussions did not happen in the office when people were dealing with the chains of command and the hierarchies. They happened in the carpool. So Bill Gore had a very clear picture for what he wanted his new company to look like. He wanted it to be a carpool all day long. And he knew the only way he could do that is if he built his organization around this one fundamental principle. No one in his new organization, including he, the founder, would ever have the authority to kill a good idea or keep a bad idea alive. And so in order to do that, he thought, I'm going to build a different kind of company. There'll be no organization charts, no chains of command, no protocols for communication. There'll be no supervisors or bosses, because in this new company, all work will be accepted rather than assigned. And he would use the collective intelligence of his colleagues to decide what they would do and how they would do it. This is 1958. If Bill Gore had asked anybody who knew anything about management, what do you think of my new innovative idea? They would have said to him, you're nuts. Your new company is not going to last a year. How will anything get done if nobody's in charge? Turns out quite a lot. Today, W.L. Gore & Associates, the makers of Gore-Tex and Elixir guitar strings and other innovative products, is a 10,000-person company in 30 countries around the world. It has the distinction of making a profit in every year of its existence. It also has the distinction of being one of only 4 companies that has been on Fortune's list of the best companies to work for every year the list has been created. And today, in 2015, at W.L. Gore & Associates, there still are no organization charts, still no chains of command, still no protocols of communication. There are not now today, nor have there ever been any bosses. No one at Gore has ever had the authority to assign work, because all work continues to be accepted rather than assigned. The future of management has already arrived. It's hidden in plain sight, and it's been around for over 50 years. And hardly any of us noticed. So anybody who says you can't design your organization as a network and succeed on a large scale, I'm sorry. The empirical proof is there. It's also true in the case of Morningstar. They have no supervisors. They've been around for about 2 decades. Now, not all the Vanguard companies don't have supervisors. Some of them do, and that's okay. But what they all have in common is no one has the authority to kill a good idea or keep a bad idea alive. At Google, you can disobey the CEO and you won't be fired, which is exactly what happened when one engineer, when they were dealing with the pop-up problems. Larry Page says, I hate this, we got to get this fixed. So the engineer tells him his idea, and Page says, oh, that idea is ridiculous. They're very candid in Google. Don't work on that. I don't want you spending any time on that. Engineer doesn't agree, works on it, perfects it, decides, I'm going to beta test it on Larry Page's computer. So he puts it on Page's computer. And after a couple of weeks, Page comes out, sees the engineer. I don't know what the heck's happened, but the pop-ups are gone. This is terrific. So the engineer fesses up, tells him. And Page looks at him and says, but I told you not to work on it. I'm the CEO. He says, yeah, but I worked on it my 20% time. Page and Brin have structured their organization so that they can't kill a good idea, because the 20% time is designed to allow you to disobey the supervisor, because you can't cut innovation. The problem with hierarchies and why they're unsustainable is thousands of people in large organizations have the authority to kill a good idea, keep a bad idea alive, because if you do it, you'll be fired. And the vanguard companies take away the ability to fire people for pursuing ideas. They don't necessarily get budget, but anybody can get together with anybody else and you can pursue an idea. And if you can grow it to the point that it makes sense, you get to take it straight to the leadership team. And if it makes sense, then they'll fund it. How is it that Gore was able to do this in 1958? He knew if his organization was going to work, he had to handle two problems. Number one, I have to have a mechanism in place so people will do more rather than less work. Number two, that they will do the right work rather than the wrong work. His solution is probably the most powerful of the 5 disciplines and will be the most problematic for top-down hierarchies. Hold people accountable to their peers, not supervisors. How will anything get done? It turns out Bill Gore's model has a higher, more effective level of accountability because he's turned all the workers into mutual customers. So there are no political infighting, because if you don't succeed, I don't succeed. And he put in place the most simple, elegant performance appraisal process on the planet, which most people can do in just a matter of minutes. Anybody who's done performance appraisals know it is, you'd rather watch paint dry than do performance appraisals, okay? I mean, when I walked away from Blue Cross Blue Shield and went into the consulting world, one of the first thoughts in my mind is, no more performance appraisals. But anyway, what he put in place was this. Everybody at Gore rates 20 people, everybody's rated by 20 people. And the mechanic is this. Take your 20 people, rate them from 1 to 20, no ties, in terms of your perception of their contribution to the company, hand it in. We don't ask them about this attribute or that attribute or so on. When Terry Kelly, the CEO of Gore, and Gore has a CEO, it's just that the CEO doesn't get to assign any work. It's there for interacting with the larger world. When they say, well, wait a minute, I mean, you're not getting all the information we need. Her response is, we're getting better information. Number one, it isn't the individual rating that counts. They're aggregating and leveraging collective intelligence. Nobody's smarter or faster than everybody. It's actually more objective than a single person's. I mean, a single person writing things on a piece of paper, we think that's objective? You got to be kidding. Collective intelligence is more objective. And she says, and we're measuring the things that count because you can't know them in advance. And in a fast-changing world, what counts changes over time. By tapping into the collective intelligence in the way we do, all that matters winds up being counted in the mix. It is a highly effective system. It's what they use. And so, if you want to thrive and survive in this new world that we're in, you build a network, not a hierarchy. Hierarchies are doomed because the technology of the world is a network. Customers are organizing themselves in networks more effectively than the businesses, and the businesses are going to have to catch up. Many of you in this audience, I think, need to be thinking about, will you be ready when organizations realize we need people with entirely different management skills? You have the foundation. Some of you, I think, need to challenge yourselves. Will you be willing to step into general management and adapt the fundamental framework you've learned in Agile across the enterprise? Because the whole dynamics of the discipline that is so important to you, you share in common with all of the vanguard companies who have built their form of a network. If you would like to learn more about the vanguard companies and this new management model, Optimity's research has been recently published by the American Management Association through their publishing arm, Amicon Books. The name of the book is Wiki Management, a revolutionary new model for a rapidly changing and collaborative world. When we began our time together, you probably thought that our thought experiment was nothing more than a mental exercise. By now you know it was not. We really have been transported to a new world with new rules. We are all now permanent residents, not of an 18th century agricultural paradise, but certainly of a 21st century hyper-connected world. The science fiction writer William Gibson is oftentimes quoted as saying, "The future has already happened. It's just not evenly distributed. And so it is with management. The future has already arrived. It's just been hidden in plain sight. But it will not be hidden in plain sight very much longer, because the notion that the world is changing much faster than organizations is an unsustainable strategy. And so as you sit here wondering how you will acclimate to this new world and its new rules that you suddenly find yourself in, I ask you to focus in on two things when you look at the vanguard companies. Number one, you will notice that they have achieved higher levels of human performance than most of us ever thought was humanly possible. These are extremely high-performing organizations. The other thing that you will notice is that they are overpopulated on Fortune's list of the best companies to work for. So as you think how you will acclimate to the world of work in this new world, high-performing organization, great place to work, sounds like a good deal. Welcome to the Wiki world. Thank you.